Guess who's back? Back again. Zodiac. Stella friend. Okay, this is cringe. Okay. Hello, Internet. Welcome back to another video. It's been a very long time. In fact, about a year since there's last been a video, and the reason for that is with the previous season I uploaded. I got behind with like editing and thumbnails, so I had a few weeks worth of content recorded, and then it got corrupted. And then I got lazy and decided it wasn't worth it to re-record everything. So yeah, like that's why we only made it through week 5. But this time we're back. We're back for season 6. And hopefully we make it through all 8 weeks plus possibly playoffs. But yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, which I feel like basically anyone who is watching this probably knows, because the only people watching this are probably the people in the Draft League servers that see this video, mainly JJDL. But for everyone who doesn't, for the one, maybe two people that don't know, JJDL is a Pokemon Draft League where different coaches all draft teams of specifically for this format, 9 to 11 points. They all have a budget. The better Pokemon are costs more points than the worst ones. And once a week, you face a coach in their team and you build a team specifically for that opponent and you battle. And you see who wins. Woo. Okay. Hopefully that's a good enough explanation. So let's just get into the team. So I was semi lucky by getting the 5th overall pick out of 16 coaches, which I was happy with. There is a lot of good mons that would still be at the 5th pick. Uh, we allowed a lot of the borderline uh, Terra legal Pokemon like Terra Zarude, Terra Corntea, Terra Raging Bolt were all allowed. So I could pick up one of those, or just one of the really good non-Terras. And that's ended up what I go by. Wow, that's ended what I. Wow, I cannot speak. Ha ha ha. I'm probably not cutting that out, but I ended up with one of the best non-Terra captains. That was Dragapult. And I was pretty excited to pick up Dragapult. If I had the first overall pick, this probably would have been the mon I went for just because I haven't really used it much. I think it's probably the second best non-Terra captain on the board. I think Iron Valiant's better and 9 to 11 mon. But like Pult is still very good. It has the great base 1 uh, 42 speed, and it can be both physical and special. It can spread status via Will-O-Wisp and Thunder Wave. It also gets both Reflect and Light Screen. It can be a very good support mon or facilitator. It can also, of course, break on the physical or special side. It gets U-turn, so it gets momentum, so it can uh, switch out, get some momentum on mons that want to come in to try and check it. And yeah, it's just a good piece, in my opinion. I know Dragapult has had a pretty controversial, uh, diverse opinions about the Mon. Some people think it's pretty overrated, and I used to be in that boat, but in recent times I've come around to it and seen how it can be like really good if you build around it properly and just like use it properly. It's one of the higher skill cap top tiers. It's not one that you can just like run specs or band or offensive every week and get the full value out of it. But yeah, that's my first pick. And so my next pick, I want something that paired really well with Dragapult, and ended up going with Iron Moth, and that's because Dragapult really forces in a lot of fairy types that want to come in on its Dragon Stabs. So if I U-turn out on the fairy coming in, I can U-turn out into Iron Moth, and Iron Moth being a fire poison type that can really handle most fairy types in the meta. It has the great 140 special attack and a good 110 speed. It's gonna be offensive most weeks. Like it does get some like utility. It gets toxic spikes and like it can spread different status moves. It gets it gets light screen. Does it get reflect? I'm kind of doing this on the fly. It does not get reflect. I don't see it. It just gets light screen. That's fine, but it gets like morning sun for recover. It can spread toxics. It can like whirlwind, but mostly it's going to be offensive. It gets really good coverage and gets even better coverage. Since this is my first Terra Captain. I felt like Iron Moth was a really good Terra Captain. One of the main reasons why I didn't go with one of the top tier Terra Captains with like first overall picks, there were still some that were on the board that were at the top end. I believe Terra Zarud and Terra Corn T were still on the board. But the reason why I didn't go with that is because I felt like I could get a really good Terra Captain with my second pick, which that's what I ended up getting with Iron Moth. So Iron Moth here to break the fairies as well as other mons depending on the Terra type I want to go with. Like it can set up with agility. Fiery Dance gives you a 50% chance to up the special attack, which is good. But yeah, it can run like boots, 4 attacks. It gets U-turn, more momentum. Woo. But yeah, like this is my second mon. I'm so far pretty happy with the start, and with the third pick, I ended up going with something a bit more defensive. I went with Gliscor, and Gliscor gets both stealth rocks and spikes on top of toxic spikes, so it gets all the hazards outside of sticky webs. But yeah, like it with poison heal, we can run toxic orb and give it nice recovery. Of course, it heals 1/8 instead of 1/16. But yeah, this is just one of a. This is my first like real defensive piece. It gives me a ground immunity since it's a flying type and an electric immunity since it's a ground type. It also has a pretty decent base 95 speed. It can like be offensive sets with like Swords Dance or like Earthquake. It gets like Facade, which could be fun. But this will probably be more defensive most weeks. It has the great base 125 defense. It also, of course, gets U-turn. I got all the momentum right now with my first 3 picks. But yeah, I think these first 3 gives me a pretty nice like core to really flesh out the team. And yeah, moving on to my next pick, I ended up doing something a bit more unconventional. I ended up going with Weavile. The reason why I went with Weavile was this was the point where I really started to plan out like rounds ahead to see what I possibly would be lacking if I decide to wait on. And one thing I realized based on how the draft was going was dark types that fit my team were very few and far between. Um, like King Gambit was still on the board, but and it could have been Terra, but I wanted to keep Terra on my Iron Moth, and I'm not a big fan of non-Terra King Gambit. So if I didn't go with Weavile, I would have had like the a pretty unideal dark type. But like Weavile, like it gives me really good physical offense. Like Dragapult, as I mentioned before, can be physical, but most of the time I see it more as special since Dragapult doesn't get like any reliable physical ghost stab. It gets like Phantom Force and then Astonish. So that's not great. So Weavile gives me really good pressure, gives me like knockoff. Of course, it gets like ice moves with both like Ice Punch, or it would always run Ice Spinner or Triple Axle. And can set up with like Swords Dance. And yeah, it gives me more speed. I got base 125, which with all the speed I got on my first 4 picks, really opens me up to not have to like look into speed later in the draft since I got most of it at the top end. But yeah, like that's what Weavile can provide to me, which is really nice. But moving on, I decided to get something that may seem a bit early to pick up, and that was Serena. And the reason why I went with Serena is I need Rapid Spin for this team. Both Iron Moth and Weavile are weak to rocks. If they're not holding boots or like Iron Moth like doesn't tear out of its rock weakness. So I really want Rapid Spin. And Rapid Spinners were going like really early. Like I wanted Quaquaval, but that went like right after Iron Moth was picked up. So I didn't get that, and Blastoise was picked up shortly before this, so I just decided to secure my Rapid Spinner now. It's Serena, which like I'm not the biggest fan of, but like it can do its job. It gets like Majesty for those priority moves. It gets like U-turn. It gets knockoff. It can be a good like support set. It has base 120 attack. Like it can hit hard. It has good coverage. So it's not like the worst thing. But yeah, that's where I decided to go next. I really wanted to secure some hazard removal. But yeah, moving on to my next pick, I end up wanting to finally get my steel type. And the steel type I ended up going with was Empoleon, which first of all gives me another stealth rocker, so Gliscor isn't forced into that role if I ever want to bring stealth rocks. It of course gets more momentum. This thing gets flip turn. It of course gets like knockoff. Um, it gives me some nice special bulk, which like I was kind of lacking. Like Iron Moth does have pretty good special bulk, but Iron Moth would preferably not want to be like a special wall. So yeah, like Empoleon gives me some nice special bulk, and it also gives me some key resistances I haven't covered yet. I don't have a rock resist. Well, I didn't have a rock resist until Empoleon, since my ground type is Gliscor, which is neutral to rocks, and I also didn't have a flying resist yet. So that gives me those two typings. It also gives me a dragon switch in, which I didn't have a good defensive check to dragons. Of course, Dragapult and Weavile can outspeed most dragon types and like do major damage with like dragon and ice moves respectively, but this gives me a good defensive check to dragon types, which are quite common in PAL decks. So yeah, that was one of the main purposes of Empoleon. It also gets competitive, which could be a fun like tech, as since I have Gliscor, which can stack hazards really easily, this can at least punish defog, since competitive plus this 111 special attack can actually mean it hits pretty hard. So yeah, that's Empoleon. Moving on, I decide to finally pick up my fairy type, and I decide to go with Hatterene. And the reason why I went with Hatterene is because I felt like it was the best fairy type that was still on the board. I wanted Diancie, but Diancie went shortly before Empoleon. So the reason why I went Empoleon before Hatterene is because there was still some like okay uh, fairy types if Hatterene got picked, but not for the case for Empoleon. The steel types were really lacking around that time. If I didn't get Empoleon, I may have been stuck with like a Registeel. So that's why I decided to go Empoleon for Hatterene. But moving on to Hatterene, Hatterene gives me some nice like special offense outside of like Iron Moth and Dragapult can be special. This gives me another a good special attacker. It's a fairy type, so of course it's another like dragon check. It gets moves like Healing Wish. I can like Healing Wish Mons up. It gets also other fun like support moves. It gets like Nuzzle, and it gets like slow momentum with Baton Pass. It's good coverage between like Mystical Fire and like Shadow Ball and all that stuff. It also gets Trick Room, which is a fun tech, which may seem odd. So I don't have many slow mons on this team, but with my next pick, I do actually pick up something that can abuse Hatterene's Trick Room if we decide to go that route, and that's Conkeldurr. Now, Conkeldurr I drafted for a few reasons. The first one being I needed a good Dark Resist. Right now, my only Dark Resist was Weavile, which like isn't the most defensively reliable mon. So it's not taking dark type moves real well. And if it comes in and something decides to not click a resisted type, that could be a problem. But yeah, Conkeldurr is a good dark resist. It gives me more physical offense, which is always a bonus. It also gets like random moves like defog, like more hazard removal, I guess. I don't know if I'm ever gonna run defog on Conkeldurr, but it's an option. It also gives me like good priority with Mach Punch. The only great priority I had before was Ice Shard on Weavile. So this gives me another form of a good priority. And yeah, hopefully this can do well. It gets three really good abilities with Guts, Sheer Force, and Iron Fist. I can probably Guts and Iron Fist will be the ones I run most often. Sheer Force probably does have its matchups, but like that's probably the one I run the least. But yeah, like good physical offense. It gets a bunch of different coverage on the physical side. It gets like knockoff. It gets the elemental punches. It gets stone edge. It gets poison jab. It gets grass knot on the special side. That's fun. Probably will never be brought. I can bring like facade for gut sets. And yeah. So that's Conkeldurr. That's mainly here for the dark resist, as well as a second steel or not steel, a second rock resist to go with my steel type Empoleon. But yeah, that's the reason why I end up going with Conkeldurr. Plus, Dragapult always likes a good fighting type, since like normal types are sometimes people's best response to Dragapult, and Conkeldurr can deal with normal types quite well. So that's another reason why I went with Conkeldurr. And at this point, my points are running pretty low. I believe I had 7 points left, and I really wanted Colossal for like Terrace that gives me like Stealth Rock Spikes, gives me more hazard removal with Rapid Spin. But sadly, that was taken. So I ended up getting something else. I ended up getting Regirock. And Regirock is my second Terra Captain. How the format worked, it was a Terra budget. I believe it was 26 points. Terra Iron Moth was 20. This was, I believe, 4. But yeah, like Regirock's here as a possible uh another stealth rocker. It gets other fun moves. It gets like body press. So I can like body press up to like Terra fighting sets maybe. But it gets like Thunder Wave, gets some other like random moves. It gives me another fire resist, which is nice since right now the only fire resists I have were Dragapult and Iron Moth, since my water type is also steel type, so that's just a neutral into fire. But yeah, that's just Regirock. It may come to a game. There may be a time where Terra Regirock needs to come save Terra Iron Moth. Or, but yeah. And then lastly, I had, I believe it was 3 points left, or it could have been 2 points. Terra Regirock may have been 5 points. I don't remember. But I ended up getting Kamala. And Kamala, first of all, gives me a normal type. So it can help with the possible ghost types. Currently, my only ghost resist slash immunity is Weavile, which, as I mentioned before, isn't the great defensive check to a lot of things. So Kamala for like the random uh ghost types I face, like I have Dragapult and Spectre or Band. So like the best ghost types left, that would be like your Goldangos, maybe your like Ceruledges, assuming Zoroarks, Gengars. So the normal type wasn't as necessary for me, but it still gives me good utility outside of being the normal type and Ghost Resist. It gets Rapid Spin, it gets knockoff, it gets U-turn, it gets wish, which is a random fun little tidbit thing, but it also gets like a lot of good coverage. It gets like earthquakes for the possible steals that want to come in, possibly take its normal attacks, since it does have a pretty good base 115 attack. It also gets sucker punch for more priority, which is fun. Like that always helps. The comb toast ability gives me another status absorber. I got so many on this team with Komala, Conkeldurr, and Gliscor. But yeah, like it was just something, a small little guy to round out the team. And yeah, so that's the team that we're looking at this season for season 6 of JJDL. This is probably the most like draft league, like stereotypical draft league team I've ever drafted. There's like hazards, lots of U-turns, lots of momentum, lots of knockoff, which is kind of funny. But I'm excited. I'm actually going to break the fourth wall a little bit. I've already played my week 1 game. This is actually the third time me recording this draft analysis, since the first two had audio issues. So hopefully third time's the charm, or maybe I have to record for a fourth time. And woo, hopefully not. But yeah, hopefully the week 1 video will come out sometime in the near future. If everything goes to plan, this is going to be coming out on a Wednesday. But if it's not, then uh, boo me in the comments. But yeah, thank you for watching, and hopefully I will see you sometime in the future.